very good afternoon to one and all present here. I am Vishakha Srivastav, a second year student of Chanakya National Law University, Patna. I am here to present my research paper titled The Role of United Nations in Conflict Resolution and Peacemaking, which is in consonance with the theme of this conference, Communal Harmony and Nation Building. The issues are: what is conflict resolution and peace building, conflicts resolved by the UN in the past, effective tools for crisis monitoring and conflict resolution, troubled spots or the areas which are in urgent need of conflict resolution, post-conflict peace building and reconstruction, and finally the conclusion. To begin with the introduction, a great deal of human suffering is linked to violent conflicts, political instability, and unjust practices. Short-term humanitarian relief and crisis intervention are important, but are not enough in conflicted or post-armed conflict societies. In such situations, the UN comes into action for post-armed conflict reconciliation and building of sustainable peace. Conflict prevention and resolution in international politics stays as one of the primary goals of the United Nations. The objective of protecting long-term generations from the impacts of war was integrated in the UN Charter since its inception. There are various kinds of conflicts in international politics. Conflicts in international politics can happen among countries or within the same country. Conflicts among countries frequently emerge from claims for resources and territories. Conflicts within a nation can be caused by race, religion, or lack of knowledge, or the imbalanced distribution of resources. Poverty, the scarcity of natural resources of a country, the brittleness of its political entities, and other abusive actions are some of the usual reasons why conflicts in international politics emerge. But the UN plays its role of promoting communal harmony and building peace among nations. Conflict resolution. The concept of conflict resolution began to emerge in the 1950s, when the superpower conflict threatened the very existence of humankind. Conflict resolution as a discipline focuses on the study of the phenomenon of conflict and to analyze ways to bring it under control. In the present context, conflict resolution involves those methods and processes which facilitate the peaceful ending of conflict. The increasing instances of conflicts around the world resulted in the creation of an important role of the United Nations to resolve the conflicts among nations and ensure communal harmony. Conflict resolution may include democratization or even development. Political participation through democratic processes may be a method to avoid conflict in the first place. Alternatively, conflict resolution can be defined as the efforts taken to resolve conflicts directly through communication, which includes negotiation, mediation, holding peace conferences, diplomacy, etc. Moving on to the recent trends in international political conflicts. The United Nations has played a very preeminent role in the peaceful resolution of armed conflict around the world. UN peacemaking flourished in the decade following the end of the Cold War. Many long-standing armed conflicts were brought to an end through political negotiated settlements, often brokered and implemented with strong UN involvement. UN remains highly active in this field today, working in partnership with regional organizations in order to bring ongoing conflicts to an end and to prevent new crises from emerging. There has been a huge decrease in the quantity of conflicts in international politics since the last period of the 20th century, by about 90%. The number of conflict casualties has also significantly declined. In the 20th century, the estimated number of casualties for the conflict annually was 40,000 to 50,000, but by the initial part of the 21st century, this figure has declined to approximately 500. This trend downfall in conflict casualties is an important and truly aspiring accomplishment for UN. There has been a significant surge in the quantity of conflicts remedied by effective diplomacy, including peace dialogues and global mediation. To help create, confirm, and enrich global norms is an effective measure strategy that the UN can promote prevention in international conflicts. Peace building. The concept of peace building was introduced in the UN in the 1992 report, An Agenda for Peace, by the former UN Secretary Boutros Ghali. The Brahmi report from 2000 defined peace building as activities undertaken on the far side of the conflict to reassemble the foundations of peace and provide the tools for building on those foundations something that is more than just the absence of war. Countries emerging from conflict, together with development partners, the UN, and other international organizations, have articulated a shared vision of peace, building through the international dialogue on peace building and state building. Failure is costly, as some nations emerge painfully from devastating conflicts, only to slide right back into violence. The 2005 World Summit approved the creation of a new peace-building commission. It is supported with the UN Secretariat by a peace-building support office that draws on the expertise of the many different UN entities involved in peace-building, including the Department of Political Affairs. A new peace-building fund was also established. Peace-building programs are strategic, prioritized interventions driven by the analysis of peace and conflict that address underlying causes or drivers and consequences of conflict. These programs build confidence in peace agreements and contribute to restoring social contracts between the state and the people. Public administration and social services delivered in an effective and equitable manner can address grievances that underlie or trigger violent conflict. They can also offer a means for the state to reach out to the society at large and rebuild its legitimacy and systems of accountability. Conflicts resolved by the UN in the past. Saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war was the main motivation for creating the UN. Since its inception, the UN has often been called upon to prevent disputes from escalating into war. Peacekeeping. The first UN peacekeeping mission was established in 1948. Born at the time of the Cold War, rivalries frequently paralyzed the Security Council. UN peacekeeping goals were primarily limited to maintaining ceasefires and stabilizing the situations on the ground. UN peacemaking expanded in the 1990s as the end of the Cold War created new opportunities to end civil wars through negotiated peace settlements. Effective tools for crisis monitoring and conflict resolution. The UN believes that the initial policy for stopping conflicts in international politics is not to begin it. There are situations wherein there will just be no other choice but to initiate military activities to react to true and worrisome threats. However, the UN believes that military initiatives must only ever be done in the most hopeless situations as a final option and in situations where it will result to greater benefits than disadvantages. Troubled spots or the areas in need of urgent conflict resolution. The Peace and Conflict Instability Ledger of the UN presents the ranking of countries across the world. This evaluation is very useful for policymakers in the UN as it focus on the troubled spots where conflict preparedness and management are urgently required. Moving on to the conclusion. The UN is doing all things possible to eradicate the source of conflicts in international politics. UN realized that conflicts in international politics develop effectively in places where poverty is so severe. Because of this, the UN has since made it a goal to help in the eradication of poverty. The UN also believes that the lack of education and access to it also leads to the emergence of new conflicts in political societies. It can also establish a huge gap between the country and its people, if the latter can be readily manipulated since they neglect the happenings of the society. The United Nations is also present to guarantee that justice, the rights of people, and basic liberties are acknowledged. It is evident that the equivalent of all conflicts in international politics is the presence of various types of weaponries. As a result, the UN has encouraged countries to strive towards the eradication of all nuclear weapons. Thus, it can be said that the role of the UN in conflict resolution and peace building extends well beyond traditional diplomacy, and there should be more efforts to bolster UN peace building capacity, in particular by strengthening the ability of the organization to employ and support mediation in order to head off potential crises. Thank you.